Hey everyone, and welcome to Cosplay Sewing School. Today's Maker Monday. I have with me Amy from Swimming in a Sea of Estrogen. Hey Amy, how you doing?
I'm great.
So,
how are you today?
Really good. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what your channel is all about?
Well, I'm Amy, obviously. I am a mom. I have 4 kids. We have 3 girls and a boy. And Todd, who is the, I guess, guy of the house. All of our kids are gone. So we're empty nesters, which is really fabulous, but at the same time not, because our kids are great and we kind of love having them around. I sew mostly, and that's what you'll see on my YouTube channel is mostly sewing, occasionally another craft here or there. But yeah, mostly sewing. I've been sewing for 40 years since I was young. My mom taught me, and then I learned progressively through 4-H. And I do crochet, don't knit. Haven't been able to figure out how to make 2 hands work together at the same time.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, just pretty much anything crafty. I'm willing to try it at least once.
Awesome. So is sewing a hobby or a business for you? How does sewing fit into your life?
Sewing is my hobby. I think like most creators, I have multiple hobbies, but sewing is the one that gets the majority of my time. I like photography. I like painting. I like a lot of different things. I even like woodworking. I don't do it very often. And usually it's trying to con my dad into making something for me. So, but yeah, sewing is my major hobby, and it's not. I do it every night when I get home from work. I sew, or I'm in my sewing room, cleaning up, getting ready for a new project, or reading a pattern, trying to understand how to put it together. But yeah, it's my main hobby.
Awesome. Well, what kind of sewing do you do? I mean, there's all different kinds of sewing out there. Are you historical? Do you do cosplay? Do you make regular day clothes?
Yes. So until I'll go back a little bit. Growing up, I mostly just made patterns or clothing from like the big 4 patterns. And then when I had my kids, I would make Halloween costumes, blankets, and those kind of things. And then I stopped sewing for a while, went through a divorce, and then I met this cute guy that's out in the other room. And he was a LARPer, and he asked me to go to a LARP with him. And I was like, okay, I guess. He's like, just go once, and if you hate it, you never have to go again, and I won't be upset. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. So I needed a costume in like a week. So I threw together a costume, and we went to the LARP, and I got to beat the crap out of people with foam swords, and it was awesome, and I loved it. So I was totally hooked. So that got me back into making costumes for me and not just my kids. And through that process, I found the PDF's pattern sewing community. Mm-hmm. And I started testing some just normal muggle clothes patterns from several different companies. And that's how I got into making my own clothing. I do make pants, not very often, but mostly tops. Get a little personal. I have huge ass boobs. There's no other way to say it.
And so okay.
Getting a shirt to fit properly doesn't happen with fast fashion. And so by sewing my own clothes, everything fits really well. And I don't have, popping buttons on button-up shirts, or I don't have big gaping necklines because I need to get something that fits well enough. And from there, I got into historical costuming. And so just about a year and a half ago, I started my first historic sewing project. And now I'm like gung-ho. I love it.
So what is your favorite thing to sew though? Like if you come home at night and you're like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. What do you do?
If I just want a brain dead project that I don't have to think much about, I'll make, a nice V-neck. Basically they're t-shirts, but tops for me, or one for Todd, or something that's I've done so many times I don't really have to think about. If I'm really just not into sewing, I'll just sit and read a pattern or clean up my sewing room a little bit.
I find
yeah.
cleaning so therapeutic. Like sometimes
Yeah.
it's so fun. So,
Yeah.
and then you find all your goodies. Just don't ever organize your bead stash. That can take a while.
I did that.
Yeah. And then
It
I
was
end
awful.
up looking at all the little pretties forever.
I was just gifted a bunch of buttons recently, and I spread them all out on my floor and sorted them by color and type, and it was a nightmare. But I love it now because, you know, they're all rainbow and pretty. But yeah, it was a nightmare.
Awesome. So, what is your process you go through? So let's say that you're looking to start maybe a new historical project, or you have a LARP event coming up, and you want to do a nice big build. You know, you're working on something that's going to take a bit. How do you go about going from here to like reality?
Oh, that's a good question. I think well, I'm taking part in the historical Frozen Cause 2 collaboration. And that's a good example because it's an era I've never sewn before. It's the 1890s. And as far as historical costuming, I had only ever done 18th century, you know, about 1730s specifically. So the first thing I did was start looking at all of the undergarments I needed to get the, you know, just in my head, thinking about what I needed to do to get the correct silhouette, you know, and that's of course the combinations for chemise and drawers, stockings, corset cover, and then on out. And from that point, I look at, of those things, what's the most difficult? Because to me, trying to conquer the most difficult or challenging thing, if I can get that out of the way, then the others aren't quite such a big mountain. And I haven't ever read the book, but Todd has talked to me about the book Eat That Frog probably 100 times. And it basically says that if you have a list of tasks to do the hardest or the most difficult one first, because then all the others are easier.
That's an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, and I need to read the book because it's recommended in a lot of like self-help or business classes, those kind of things, because it really does pan out. I mean, if you think about it, if you're cleaning the house, if you can do the nasty toilets and bathtubs and those kind of things first, everything else is cake. So so that's what I do. So you can kind of see it right here, not very well. So I made the corset first, and I actually got really lucky, and the mock-up fit perfectly. So I just made it.
But that's like
never happens.
That's well, lottery winning there.
Yeah, well, and normally, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about my trunk length is, I'm really long, I'm tall, but I'm also really long in the trunk. So I usually have to add 2 to 3 inches to most patterns. And this, I used the Truly Victorian pattern, and I didn't have to add any height in the trunk.
You know what? I've used a few of their patterns too, and I come to think of it, I usually add an inch, and I didn't add my usual inch in that one.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I was shocked right off the bat, because my normal process, I would make the pattern right as written, and then make the trunk adjustments, and then start making any other adjustments I needed to make. But I didn't have to make any. So I was like, oh, okay, well, this project is going to be a lot quicker than I expected. So yeah. So now that the stays were done, or the corset, this project is on kind of a timeline. So I was like, you know what? I can wear shorts and a tank top underneath it if I have to. I can forego a corset cover. Let's start on the split skirt and then the jacket. And then if I have time before everything has to be videoed and released, then I'll go back and make the corset cover and then the chemise and drawers, just because, you know, I think the corset cover affects the silhouette more than the chemise and drawers. So,
yeah, that's more for your own personal happiness.
Yeah. So that's kind of my process. And it's the same with any projects. You know, I start with the most difficult thing first. You know, if if I'm making a new dress pattern that I've never made before, I'll start first by reading through the pattern several times. And if it's not something that has to be assembled in order, I'll do it from, if it has a zipper, I'll do the zipper first and then start putting it together.
So you try to work flat as much as possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like working flat.
So much easier. That
Way
was something
easier.
I learned long ago. If you can make it flat, do it flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you find in your sewing? What is the part of your process that is just the thing that always gets to you? Like the difficult part? Is it just getting past perfectionism? Is it getting like, what is it that gives you the most trouble? And how do you get through that?
Honestly, I think the thing that gives me the most trouble is starting, because once you start, you can't go back, maybe not the most trouble, but I think that's the most difficult thing is to actually get started. Because once I get started, I kind of get on a roll and I go.
Because getting started is a really difficult, I know I will procrastinate forever. And then once, it's so funny because once you finally dig in, you're like, why did I not do this?
Yeah. Why didn't I start 2 weeks ago when I should have? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for other people, that's a great thing to hear, because I think a lot of people struggle with getting started and they always think, oh, it's just only me. And to hear someone like you who's been sewing for so long and you still have the, getting started pre-anxiety, like that's just lets you know we all get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's, sometimes it's the fear of cutting the expensive fabric. Well, if you have that fear, make a mock-up. I mean, if you don't know that a pattern fits you really well, you're going to need to make a mock-up anyway, and use a thrifted bed sheet or something that's similar to the fabric you're going to end up using, so that you're not scared of cutting the expensive fabric. That doesn't mean that after the mock-up is done and you have everything fitting right, that cutting the expensive fabric is going to be easy, but it might be a little less frightening.
Hair raising, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I have 5 yards of $50 a yard originally, and I didn't pay that much, Chanel butterfly fabric that's silk, and I have yet to cut it. It's been sitting in my closet for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't decided what it wants to be yet.
I have the same. I have some embroidered. God, it's gorgeous too. It's like a crimson red with embroidery on it, silk fabric that I got out of a de-stash page on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
For $20 a yard. But after seeing some of the silk embroidered fabric that's being sold out there, I'm thinking it is probably worth way more than that. And I'm terrified to cut it because it's gorgeous, first of all. And I'm like, this is so much money.
Do you ever worry that once you've cut it, you're going to think this was the wrong project for this fabric?
Yeah, totally. And that's why I haven't cut it yet. In my mind, I'm thinking huge grand pannier and beautiful 18th century court gown. But at the same time, I'm like, that's a lot of fabric for one dress. I don't know if I really want to do that. Yeah, I totally do. Well, and that's the same with this frozen project I've been working on. Because we kind of added it in the summer, I didn't want to spend any money on the project. So I was using all stash materials other than like the boning and the busk for the corset, because I've never made those before. And so I had some light blue sateen and some wool that I used for the split skirt. So I'm like, I'm not sure these are the right fabrics for this project. I mean, I'm still not sold on the sateen, but I'll have to see once the sleeves are on if it actually holds up like it should. But if it's not the right fabric, it's not the right fabric.
Yeah.
I'm still going to have an okay costume to wear.
Well, you'll have more than okay costume to wear. I'm sure it's going to be a super fun costume.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
I can't wait to see everybody's frozen stuff though. Like that's really, I've been watching it kind of come together bit by bit. And YouTube, this is going to be good stuff. I promise. Like it's
going to be amazing stuff.
Is there a hashtag for that? Are you guys going to release on a hashtag?
Historical frozen.
Historical frozen. Yes.
Yeah.
So, everybody Google that or YouTube that, search it.
Yeah. It's going to be, I mean, Christine Miller, which is Sostine, Scraps and Sequins, Lady Rebecca Fashions, Jalea Ward. I mean, it's just,
yeah, there's a,
yeah. I saw Sostine putting her stuff together the other day, and I was like, oh.
I do too. Her Instagram is just like, oh. Yeah. I love her. Okay, so we started talking about inspiration. Who, if I steal your phone and I'm looking through your Instagram or your Facebook, who's top on your list? Who are you like always oohing and eyeing about?
Sostine. I mean, really, because of her embroidery, the embroidery she does. Now, granted, she has a 10 needle machine, and I only have a single needle machine, but I'm really wanting to learn more about making my embroidery machine work. And so I think that's one reason, other than the fact that her stuff is just absolutely stunning. I'm using her to kind of learn from how to do the historical embroidery. And, with the 10 needle machine, she can just place her hoop and move it and move it and move it. And I know there's a way to do that with my machine, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. So, yeah, she's definitely top. Bernadette,
we all love Bernadette. She's such a special talent. She has her own little space.
Yeah. And this one's kind of new to me. I mean, I had seen her before, but I really just started watching her most recently, and that's Rachel Maxey. I really just enjoy her videos because she doesn't take herself too seriously, and it's hilarious. I love it. Kathy Hay. Everything Kathy Hay. Trying to think. Oh, Dave's a la mode.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with that. I'm gonna have to go look it up.
She makes Georgian, well, she might not just be Georgian, but reproduction jewelry. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. Yeah. And then Kate from Willoughby and Rose. I follow her. So those are probably the top. Oh, and Peggy from Noodle Stitch.
Oh, I'll have to look her up too.
Yeah, and I'm kind of biased because she's a fellow Oregonian, so only she lives on. Matter. Yeah, she lives on the beach, and I'm clear over on the other side of the state by Idaho. So
Hey, you gotta share the space where you can find it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this will lead into a good next question. Okay, so you've been given all the money that you need to learn something new, a new hobby, a new project. It can be sewing related, it could be anything. What are you going to go learn?
I think it probably would be the embroidery, the historical embroidery. Yeah, definitely. Just because right now I've got normal embroidery thread. It's, whatever. But I don't feel like I have the resources to really dive in and I shouldn't say resources, time to dive in and learn it. So if I had unlimited resources and time, that's probably what I would dive in and learn.
Awesome. So do you have any projects you're working on right now that, I know you mentioned the frozen, anything coming down the pipe that you want us to get excited about? So, we keep on the lookout.
Yeah, so I'm working on the frozen like we talked about. And then I've also been working on a that's kind of a historically adequate 1730s merchant class costume. And it's not quite done. I just have the little things left to do, the mitts and the cap and those kind of things. But I wore it to a wedding last weekend.
Oh.
Because it was a costume wedding.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was so cool. I mean, it was all the bridesmaids wore elf ears, and the bride had taken her dress and put lights up inside it.
Oh, why do I never get invited to weddings like this?
And vines and those kind of things. Well, I was photographing it, so I had to be comfortable. I was like, well, I'm going to take this costume for a test run because I've got to be in costume, but I need to be comfortable.
Movable, yeah.
Well, the first thing I did was not put my stays on correctly, which is not good. But so I have that project coming down that is, in wearing it last weekend, I discovered I need to cut about 6 to 8 inches off of the petticoat, because I told it not to. Hang on.
No problem.
Alexa, stop.
I know, you specifically asked it, told it, like,
told-
it's like, I don't care.
I don't care. I'm gonna alarm anyway.
Yeah.
So I have that project coming that I've just got to finish up, and after I alter the petticoat. On a side note about the putting the stays on wrong, I had somebody else help me with them that hasn't put on stays before, and we had them too high. And so by the end of the night, my kidneys were killing me because I had the narrowest part of the stays were up too high. You know, I needed to pull them down a couple inches. But I'm also doing the vintage Halloween, the Weldon's fancy dress.
Yes,
costumes.
I'm doing that too. So what did you choose?
I'm making the golf bag.
Oh, yay! I'm doing Heinz 57, girl.
Yeah, I think, let me see if I can pull it up on my phone while we're talking. But so I work part-time at a golf course in the summer, well, spring through fall, on the grounds crew. And I mow the greens on Saturdays and Sundays. And it's like 2 hours a day, twice a week, and I get free golf out of it. So
hey,
I'm
that
okay
works.
with it. Yeah. So when I saw the golf costume, I was like, oh, I can't not do this. You know, it was almost like I didn't really have a choice. But the picture I found only was black and white. Well, I've since found the color picture from the magazine, and it's like a lime green golf bag with brown leather trim, and it has some clubs sticking out of the back of the bag, and she's wearing a beret with a little golf club sticking off of it. And I don't know if can you see it, or is it too reflective?
Yeah, we can see it. Yep.
There you go. So that's it.
Cool.
So yeah, after the golf bag and Frozen and finishing this merchant class costume, I don't have anything really planned. I have things I would like to try, but nothing.
Hey, I'm sure something awesome will come up. It's like a never-ending spring of ideas usually, right?
Yeah. Well, there's another collaboration coming up, but it's not till April Fool's Day, and it's making costumes using ridiculous fabrics. And so
I see. So we're doing the Project Runway unusual materials challenge, right?
Yeah. Like I don't even know how to. Yeah. So I'm excited about that one because there's so many weird fabrics out there.
Oh yes, that one is like, you can go crazy.
Yeah.
You can totally go crazy. Well, okay, so I just have a couple more questions with you. One should be mostly easy. What's your favorite tool in your sewing room? What's your favorite tool?
I have a magnetic cutting mat and magnets that hold fabric. And
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. It was really expensive. It was a birthday gift. Otherwise, I'd have never bought it. I really like that, especially for cutting slippery fabrics, because it holds everything down so well. Other than that, probably, I can't believe I'm going to say this because I hate hand sewing, but my thimble. I have learned to use a thimble this year, and I am really uncomfortable if I'm sewing without it.
Wow, so I really need to get the whole thimble.
Thank you, Abby Lynn.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I have like bigger hands, and like the thimbles are always weird. I guess it's because I spent so long sewing without one that it feels really awkward sewing with one, and I just have to like find one that I actually want to use, I think.
Yeah, it took me several different thimbles to find one I liked, and I have it right here. So I have this kind, and if you watch Yul's Yule's videos, you'll see this is the kind
Yes,
she
I
uses
have
too.
seen that kind. I have not tried one yet. I'll have to try
I
one.
like it because I've used pliers to actually bend the straps
And
or
to
the
get it
little
to
bars
stay on. Yeah, because they're either
to
too
keep.
small to get on my finger or they fall right off. And then I'm like, you know, I do the hand talking thing and then it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. So, and now this one, I mean, it
yeah.
doesn't come off. And, but I tried several. I tried leather thimbles. I tried regular metal thimbles. I tried rubber thimbles. And until I found those, I was never comfortable using anyone. And now I keep one in each.
That's awesome.
I have like 3 or 4 little stocked housewives and they each have a thimble in them. So yeah.
Now I just have to keep my cat from stealing mine. I used to have a whole stack of thimbles. Not that I ever used them, but the cat has stolen all of them. I have no idea where they are. Thimbles and erasers. He has a thing for. So
you'll find them with all the missing socks from the washer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So in parting, before we do our final, what is your advice to newish sewers, people beginning their journey, even as a maker in general, anybody who's making things in the beginning of their journey? What, if you could go back and tell yourself in the beginning of your journey something, what would you say?
Just make it. Just make the thing, because you're never going to not be a beginner if you don't start making. And so it would be to just make it and to not be your own worst critic, because even Picasso used to draw stick figures. I mean, if you want to think about it that way, everybody started out as a beginner at some point in time or another, and they just got out of their own heads and started making and kept making. And you learn by failing. And so accept your fails, not as fails, but as teaching moments. So, I mean, that would be my biggest. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, find a mentor, whether it's somebody online or, you know, one of your local friends, or if you have a sewing shop or whatever craft or maker that you're working on, find somebody who's willing to mentor you and ask for help. And don't be afraid to get tough answers. You know, it might be, you know, you're doing this way, when in reality you should be doing it this way. Be willing to accept alternative answers, I guess I should say.
That is excellent words of advice. Ones that I know that I needed to tell. I still need to tell myself sometimes.
Me too.
It's like,
yeah.
I actually have big posters that I put in my sewing room about that kind of stuff. Like, so I can look up and remember, okay, just keep doing it. It will happen. Like, you'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll get there. And you won't ever know if you don't try. I mean, That's the biggest thing. Yeah. And and like I said, don't be your own critic. Everybody has imposter syndrome. I have no doubt. Zach Pinsent, Bernadette Banner, they all have imposter syndrome. So don't look at somebody else's work and compare yourself to them, because you don't know where they are in their journey. You know, you could be looking at somebody who has been sewing for 40 years, or who has formal training or something, where you're learning from YouTube. It's, you know, you've got to look at your own journey and ignore everybody else's.
Very wise words. Very, very wise words. So where can people find you?
On Instagram and Facebook, I believe it's the same. Yeah, all 3 of them are the same. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube are all Swimming in a Sea of Estrogen. And I do have one other project I want to talk about, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
And it's the same. I have a KoFi account, and that is Swimming in a Sea of Estrogen as well. And that is the project I want to talk about, because I am working. I already said I live in Eastern Oregon, and I live about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from the Whitman Mission. I'm going to use language that is probably not the best, but it's how I was taught history growing up. So I grew up here. And one of the things that we learned about was, of course, the pioneers coming across the Oregon Trail. And then in addition to that was all the missionaries and mission work that went on. Well, the Whitmans owned or had a mission in Walla Walla. And then there was what they called the Whitman Massacre, where the Indians came in and killed them all. That was the history. Well, that was the history I was given.
That's what you were given. Yeah.
Well, so my KoFi project is that I want to recreate a pioneer era gown, go to the Whitman mission, and talk about what led up to those events. But I want to make sure I include the Indigenous perspective, because that's something that was left out of my history education. And so that's why I'm really careful talking about it, because I don't want to be insensitive and I don't want to say something wrong, but I want to make sure people know that what I'm saying isn't what I believe, you know.
Understood. Yeah. No, we have to be able to talk about things to make them better.
Right. And so one of the things that I've done in this project is that I've obviously Googled and watched YouTube videos. So I found the old Whitman mission informational video that all the kids watched when we went to visit the mission when we were in school. And I watched it, and the whole time I'm like, oh, this is cringy. But then I found the new one that has been reproduced, and they have included the local tribes and their information. And I was like, oh, this is so much better.
That's wonderful. That
so,
progress.
Yeah. So I found all of that after I'd already decided to do the project. So I'm feeling like now the project is going to be a little bit easier than I first thought, because they've already kind of started doing some of that work. But yeah, so that KoFi is to fund that.
That is a
project.
Wonderful project. That really sounds really interesting. And I love the idea of bringing in the rest of the picture, because this is what I always tell my kids too, when they're learning, there's always two sides. My father's Lebanese, right? And so the stuff that happened in Lebanon, we were taught one thing here in the States, and my dad was telling me other stuff, and family was literally coming in and telling me things like that they had seen with their own two eyes. And growing up with one foot on one side of the world and one foot on the other, and the politics being so massively different, it pushed into me that there really is always two sides of a story.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
always.
Well, and that's, you know, I mean, I live on the Oregon Trail. Oregon Trail goes right through here. So I feel like it's a project that I need to do. It's not something I'm going to want to do it too, but
it feels close to you.
Right. And we have an interpretive center that's about 45 miles away. So I'm going to try and get there and get some information from there as well. But I'm kind of like you, you know, my dad was studying his PhD when I was born. And so we moved to Costa Rica when I was 6 months old, a year, I think. And my parents tell a story of being stopped in Nicaragua because they drove a Volkswagen bus, you know, so all the windows were closed with the curtains on them, and I'm sleeping in the back seat. And they were held at machine gun point because they were Americans going through Nicaragua in the 70s. You know, that's just not a cool thing. You know, so I've always had, my parents were really, really good about making sure I had understandings of other cultures and other,
perspectives.
Yes. Perspectives is a good word. So so I try hard to,
you know, and nobody's perfect, and we all have stuff to learn, but like that step forwards of everybody making step forwards, I think it all adds up.
Yeah.
You know, we'll all, but that is a fantastic project, and I will make sure that I add links to that and all of your information, you know, in the description, and we'll try and add some pictures in here too. And is any parting words? I know we had kind of a deep topic there, so
no. Parting words, just have fun. I mean, really, if you're making stuff, just have fun. You're going to be happy with what you make if you're enjoying the process of making it. It may not be the prettiest and it may not be the best constructed, but you're going to enjoy the process. And that's, just have fun.
It's the whole I made it thing. that happy feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Look what I made.
Exactly. And we all become little 2-year-olds going, look, mommy, I did a good job, you know, like
put this on the fridge for me, mom. Yeah.
I do it to my husband all the time. I go, look at this thing. And he goes, what am I looking at? And I'm like, look at this seam. It's perfect. And he's
look
like,
at these stripes match.
Okay, it's perfect. And I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And your friends may all go, but you're like, I did it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So just have fun and celebrate yourself. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And I wish you all the best of luck. And we will be watching your channel for all of your cool projects coming out.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.